Thank you for listening and supporting the Daily Memphian. Sign up for one of our many free newsletters and breaking news alerts at dailymemphian.com/email to receive the latest local news stories impacting our community. Our weekly newsletters cover everything from sports to arts and culture, business, food, and more, along with daily updates of all the news we publish each day. Sign up or manage your email preferences at dailymemphian.com/email.
I'm Bill Drees with the Daily Memphian, joined by Tennessee Republican Party Chairman Scott Golden. We record this on Saturday, February 3rd. We're here to talk about the 2024 election year, which is here at last. And this is on the record. We'll get to the key dates that are just around the corner and what they mean. And all of those, of course, are listed in the story in the Daily Memphian that goes with that. But first, Scott, you are just back from the Republican National Committee's annual meeting in Las Vegas. Based on what you heard and saw there, is the Republican presidential primary down to former President Donald Trump at this point?
Well, I mean, there was, as you know, as people may have read, there was a potential resolution that was being floated around that the Republican Party would declare President Trump the presumptive nominee. There was some historical evidence of that, in 2016. I wasn't on the committee, but in May of 2016, Reince Priebus, when that was between he and Ted Cruz, the Republicans met and declared Trump the presumptive nominee. Of course, that was in May. And you saw that President Trump himself said, well, I'd prefer people vote at the ballot box. So that effort was kind of quailed at the committee. And I think everybody's just ready for, we've had two states vote. Nevada, the reason why we're out there is that next Thursday is the Nevada caucus. And then towards the end of February will be the South Carolina primary. And, and I think probably after South Carolina moving into Super Tuesday, the calls for, where the primary is going to, when the primary is going to end. And we can talk about kind of why that is. But it just helps the party start the fall fundraising earlier. Mm-hmm. And if there's a competitive race, I think everybody says, let's let the voters. But at some point in time, if you're not getting enough delegates to get nominated at the convention, then each campaign needs to sort of decide how long they want to go.
Right. And of course, Tennessee is part of Super Tuesday, what was originally called Southern Super Tuesday way back there in 1988. Tennessee, and I believe more than a dozen other states, as well as American Samoa, all part of that. So right now, from what you see among Republicans in Tennessee, what is your sense of the contest just here in Tennessee on Super Tuesday, with a mention that early voting begins Valentine's Day in the Democratic and Republican primaries?
That's exactly, yeah. So we're voting in a couple of weeks. Look, there hasn't been much campaigning in Tennessee, and I would say if you would have asked me a year ago this time, would there be a lot of visits to Tennessee by the candidates? And I probably would have told you then that I expected, that everybody would sort of pass through at some point in time. And truth be told, it just hasn't really materialized. A couple stops from a couple of the candidates, mainly for their own fundraising effort, but not that traditional bus tour from Knoxville, Chattanooga, Davison, Jackson down into Memphis, right? And you and I go back far enough to remember when Herman Cain did it and Ted Cruz did it. And so, you had these types of that would, sort of gin up your supporters and come out on primary day, but it just hasn't materialized. It seemed like, that the candidates themselves have spent more time in Iowa and more time in New Hampshire, and then now Nevada and South Carolina. It just seems that's where it goes. So that being said, Obviously President Trump has got a long history of Tennessee, made a couple campaign stops in 2015. You're talking, now we're into 9 years ago. And then did well in 2016, won the primary then, and, was no stranger to Tennessee. Came back, and, the second rally that he held when he was in office was in Nashville. It was in 2017, three campaign rallies in 2018 in support of Senator Blackburn. He's been back twice already to Nashville. So when you have the other campaigns that haven't really campaigned here in a known quantity, and President Trump that's been here, there's no polling out there, but just anecdotally, people want you to show up and shake hands and make the case as to why you should be the Republican nominee. So
yeah, and we should say that when it comes to Super Tuesday, what you have is you have different candidates, and this is on both sides, Democrats and Republicans. The different campaigns pick a combination of states that they think they can win, and sometimes it's the same states, but a lot of times it's them looking at a state like Tennessee and saying, well, that seems insurmountable for us there, so let's just cede that state and move on to something else. Does Nikki Haley have an operation here in Tennessee that
I've talked to a couple of their people. They've got some campaign staffers, and they did a great job getting delegates. They've got a full slate of delegates. So I know that there's some support out there, but I don't, again, it just seemed like the money was so focused in the early carve out states that there wasn't any staff on the ground, or they're, not really sort of, doing events and all of those things. And, and what's interesting, if the RNC rules and how each state kind of cobbles together its delegates. Well, Tennessee's one of the unusual ones where we have both statewide delegates and then we have district delegates, and they're calculated different. And there's a reason behind, those bylaws for us have been set since 2000. But it is to encourage other candidates to come into Memphis or Nashville or Chattanooga in these different congressional districts. So a candidate may not run well in the entirety of Tennessee, but there are opportunities to secure delegates if you campaign locally. But again, it just hasn't materialized, or whatever it was with the strategy. But it is one of the little quirks in our rules that kind of encourages and presents an opportunity for campaigns to sort of come in and cobble together some delegates, because ultimately this is a contest about delegates, so that when we get to Wisconsin, 1,500 whatever number of delegates, you're the Republican nominee.
Right. So let's dive a little deeper into that. And there is a copy of the ballot for March 5th on here, so folks can see that in the Democratic primary, President Joe Biden is on there all by himself. He has no opposition here. He does in some other primary states, but it's just Biden on the Democratic primary ballot. As you mentioned, in the Republican primary, you not only vote for the candidate, you also vote for the delegates, the at-large delegates, and the delegates that are specifically for the congressional district that you live in there. So several scenarios in my head here. What happens if you just feel like voting for Ron DeSantis, let's say, who's not running anymore, and you vote for him and you vote for his slate of delegates? What happens to them?
So there is a maximum and minimum threshold. Okay. So in order to receive a delegate coming out of Tennessee, a presidential candidate has to get at least 20% of the vote. So under your scenario, if you cast a ballot for Governor DeSantis, and he gets 5% of the vote, he is not eligible to receive any delegates, either statewide or in the district, right? So we calculate them statewide and the district as well. So that's the minimum threshold. You have to get 20%. The maximum threshold is 66%. So if a candidate receives 67%, they would receive the total allotment of delegates. And again, it's calculated different. I'm sorry, say that again.
So it's winner take all if you're above 66%.
Oh, over 67. Yeah, 67%, over 66%. Yes. Yeah, that's the threshold. But the minimum threshold is 20. So let's just say that a candidate A got 50% of the vote, and then candidates, B through L end up receiving 19% of the vote. Well, then candidate A receives all the votes because nobody made the minimum number.
Okay.
Right. So you have to have that 20%.
Okay.
So that's and that gets difficult when campaigns are suspended.
Right.
Right. That's and I think we certainly saw that in Tennessee when Senator Thompson suspended his campaign kind of right even before the Tennessee primary, and ended up, it was I think it was Governor or Mitt Romney and Newt Gingrich and Mike Huckabee and everybody else ended up surging ahead of Senator Thompson, even though, he's a Tennessee, rock star. And but when you suspend the campaign, everybody goes in and says, well, I'm going to vote for somebody that's in the race.
Okay. Second scenario, someone votes for one of the candidates in the Republican presidential primary, but they don't vote for any delegates for anyone. Does their vote still count?
It does. It counts. So the calculations are all going to be made based on that first vote of which candidate you are for. So, let's say candidate A gets 60% of the vote, candidate B gets 40% of the vote. Then what happens is that the delegates associated with candidate A will then be counted. We have 14 delegates statewide. So in that scenario, it would be 9 for candidate A and 5 for candidate B. So then you would go to the actual vote. So your next ballot is for the 14 at-large delegates and 3 in the district. We would rank the 14 statewide, and then the top 9 would become the official delegates, and the next 9 would become the alternate delegates, right? And so then candidate B's would be the same way as well. Top 5 would be the delegates, and then the next 5 would be the alternates.
Right.
So, and look, those are difficult votes because there are a lot of people. They come from all over the state. You're going to see upwards of 23 to 25 to 28 names. I mean, if ask somebody in politics, I would say, call up the party chairman in your local county and say, who do you know? Who do you like? Because if somebody's from Bristol and they're running statewide, it's going to be really difficult for somebody from Collierville to have a conversation about who they are, but there are people in politics. And so if you're curious, I would, contact somebody. Your state legislators certainly know a lot of these people that are running and party officials and everybody else. But yeah, there's going to be, you're going to be presented with a lot of names on the ballot.
Mm-hmm. A few dates to establish where we are in the election year and what is on the immediate horizon. February 5th is the date that is this coming Monday when this article is going to run. That's the date candidates in the August state and federal primaries can begin checking out qualifying petitions to get on the ballot. There are primary races in August for the state House and state Senate, 9 congressional seats across the state, including the 2 that cover Memphis, and primaries, Democratic and Republican, in the statewide race for U.S. Senate. This is the Senate seat currently held by Republican Marsha Blackburn. So, as I understand it, the state party has last month made some changes to how to get on the ballot in the Republican primaries. And these were changes that had already been discussed and talked about to take effect in 2026. But the state executive committee decided to go ahead and do this in 2024, right?
Well, so we have been, and I can can walk you through the history of it, but the 1973, there were a lot of election reforms in 1973, and one of them, basically requires by the state legislature for the both parties, the Democrats and Republicans, to have bona fide members of their party, and that's the language that they use, bona fides. And so then it's up to the parties to sort of create that bona fides, okay? And so our original iteration of the Tennessee Republican Party bylaws were written in 1991 and officially passed in 1993. And since that time, they have been, tinkered with, and as the states changed and everything, we've kind of changed it. There's two fundamental principles that we have. One is that we want everybody that's interested in seeking an office to participate with the party that they're seeking. So we'd love for you to go to a Republican meeting, or if you're too busy for a meeting, we want you to write a check. One of the reforms that we just did for the first time is that we allow people to get involved with candidates. So, for example, if you're active in your local state representative campaign or county mayor or district attorney or whatever it was, that now counts towards your participation with the organization. The other thing that we want you to do, and of course, Bill, as you know, we don't register by party in Tennessee. So there are no registered Republicans or Democrats. So the only way you sort of know that somebody's a Republican is when you walk into the voting booth, starting on February 14th, they're going to ask you, do you want a Republican or Democrat ballot? So our bylaws go back over 4 elections. And what we want from candidates is for them to have voted in 3 of the last 4 elections. So what last Saturday, the last kind of change to this new iteration of our bylaws is that we voted to implement immediately that if you, in one of these 4 elections, if you voted in a Democrat primary, that you would be a non-bona fide Republican. And again, this doesn't go back to 1980 or 1990. We only go back 4 election cycles. So in this case, it goes back to when President Trump was on the ballot 4 years ago. Right. So those are the 4 elections that we look at. March of 2020, August of 2020, which of course was the Senator Hagerty Senate primary, August of 2022, which was all the local elections and judges, and then this election that we're about to vote in now. Those are the only 4 elections that we're looking at. So the decision last Saturday was, hey, if you voted in a Democrat primary in one of those 4 elections, you will not be a bona fide Republican.
Okay.
So
and,
that's
yeah. And I think the other change is, and this is probably a more immediate cause, because you have had some question about those rules for declaring someone a bona fide Republican. And as a result, some people went to court on this to get on the ballot in the Republican primary, particularly in the new 5th district congressional primary up around Nashville. So if you file a lawsuit like that, you can't run in the primary for how many years?
10 years. So what we are saying is that, so yes, we were taken, we were taken to court last year, and ultimately we're successful in defending our ballot. And so then one of the committee felt like, look, if you're going to sue the organization, let's just say if I sue the Grizzlies because they won't let me play point guard, well, then they're not going to let me be a part of the Grizzlies anytime soon. So it makes sense that if you're wishing to be a part of an organization, that you wouldn't sue them because you don't like the way the rules are set up. So those were the changes that we sort of made, kind of protect the party a little bit. But fortunately, though, we got a lot of great rulings last year. It was very expensive and a lot of time in federal court, but we did get rulings that sort of strengthened the process that the Republican Party goes through for all of this. Mm-hmm. So we're hoping that sort of deters people from saying, well, gosh, I really wanted to do this, and how dare your rules stand in the way? And oh, by the way, I don't think the Republican Party should have any rules. What we're really trying to get for a Republican Party is just that when people go out and vote, that they can be assured that they're voting for somebody that's active and they're voting for somebody that has fidelity to the cause. And then after that, it's kind of up to the candidates and their supporters to make their campaign message as to why they should be the best Republican. We in the Republican Party just want to make sure that they're a good Republican. I mean, committed to the Republican cause.
Right.
And we just think our bylaws for 30 some odd years have said, participate with us and vote with us. And then that's good enough for you to make it to the voters and you can tell them what your ideas are for service.
Is the effect of that, though, intended or unintended? Is the effect of that you wind up clearing the primary fields, especially when there's an incumbent running for reelection?
Well, I mean, not necessarily. I think some of that's going to depend a little bit on the incumbent, right? Or and how people feel about the incumbent. So these rules were in effect in 2022. I mean, these rules have been in effect all the way through in some variation. So we there have been Republican challenges. You get them, but I think what we want, and this is, it's kind of interesting. Tennessee is one of the lowest ballot access states in the country. 25 signatures and you can run for any office in the state of Tennessee, which, essentially equates to maybe 15, 20 minutes out in front of Walmart getting signatures and you can run for any office, right? I'm not sure that that's the best way to go about it. Of course, again, we don't register by party and 25 signatures and you're off and running for whatever office it is. So what we've tried to do as a Republican Party is to really say, look, we don't mind you running. And I'm thrilled when people run. We just want you to be committed to the organization that you're seeking to represent. And, we have a platform that we'll be working on in Wisconsin. We love everybody to hold firm on the platform. But those are issues that they can talk about as whether or not they're running for county commissioner in Eastern Shelby County, or they're running for county mayor in Fayette, or they're running for Congress in Upper East Tennessee. They're all going to have different sets of issues. But fundamentally, what we're looking for is that when you walk into the voting booth, that when you see an R name there, that that's somebody that's credible, has ideas, and would do a very good job to be the Republican nominee.
Mm-hmm. It is some of this kind of the price of success for Republicans, because Republicans hold the governor's mansion, both of the U.S. Senate seats, 8 of the 9 congressional seats, and supermajorities in the state House and state Senate. If you weren't winning that big, would this be that big of an issue?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, we are very blessed that we have worked very hard, and I started back in politics when Tennessee wasn't so red, and I have to remind a lot of people Al Gore was our senator here 30 years ago, right? So we've come a long way from our side of the aisle. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, this is when you are. Well, and look, let's be honest. West Tennessee, of course, was sort of the heart of the Democrat Party for a very long time. And so you've had these people that have sort of switched over during different presidential regimes. And, now it's to the point where in a lot of cases you win the Republican primary, you ultimately win. This was, and it's not lost on us. This is where the Democrats were in the 1950s and 60s and 70s, right? That it was on their side. And incidentally, a lot of the election laws that Tennessee has were all written by the Democrats in the 60s and the 70s.
Right.
And so now they're being tested again, not from the D side, but from the R side. But yeah, I mean, that's when we are blessed with a lot of interest. We have candidates. In fact, we just got done with local candidate qualifying. We had over 475 Republicans qualify to run for local office. The Democrats had about 75. So when you see that interest is 80% on our side of the aisle, certainly things like what the Republican Party does and what the candidates are like and what we expect out of them, those are going to be points of contention. But that's because you're right. It's been very successful.
Right. Every other county in the state has some form of primaries for school board seats as of 2 years ago when the state law was changed that prohibited partisan school board races. I think in some of the counties, one side has primaries and the other doesn't, but Shelby County is the exception to that. We've got 7 elected nonpartisan school boards. 2 have races in August, the other 5 in November. So should partisan school board races come to a county where the city is so blue or Democratic and the 6 suburban towns and cities outside the city are so red and Republican?
So one of the things that that I was very pleased with and worked with the legislature, and I can't thank them enough for their wisdom in the school boards, because I mean, as you know, Tennessee law prior to 2 years ago said that you were ineligible. You can't. Even if you wanted to run as a Republican, the election commission would say, I'm sorry, we're not letting you do that. And so, now what the legislature did is that they gave the choice. So also within there is, much like we do for other county offices, the choice to call for the primary rests with your local Republican executive committee, right? So what I like about that is that committee's up every 2 years. We have reorganizations of all of our Republican, bodies across the state of Tennessee, the Tennessee Republican Party, Shelby County Republican Party, Davidson County Republican Party, whatever it is. And so that's where this issue is adjudicated. So the legislature was very insightful and said, look, we're not mandating this on anybody. This is for each local area to decide if they are interested in doing this. And I don't, it's there, it came online in October of 2022. There is more adoption today than there was in 2022, but I don't know about every county. There are still a lot of counties that haven't taken the plunge and just not gotten into it yet. But and it's ultimately that decision rests with the local Republican and Democrat parties. And that's what I like. I mean, these are your people at the neighbors. You want to, if you talk to them, if they agree with you, you go out and vote with them. If you don't agree with them, you go out and you vote against. But that decision's there. I don't have anything to do with it. The state executive committee doesn't have anything to do with it. So clearly the decision for local school boards rests with people that only live in Shelby County.
All right.
So I thought that was a really great way to proceed if you're going to have a bill like that.
Right. And the vote by the party steering committee here in Shelby County was a close one on this question the last time that it came up. And Kerry Vaughn, the chairman of the Shelby County Republican Party, has said the issue might be open again. It might come up for consideration again in the future, depending on how things go. A final point in our conversation here, we've talked about this before, because while the Republicans have had great success in the state, Shelby County is the largest blue dot in the state by virtue of the city of Memphis and its Democratic base of voters. So in a statewide election, in a presidential election, what do you tell the bona fide Republicans in Shelby County is their role, and is there discouragement, do you think, among those Republicans in Shelby County about what their job is and what the outcome's going to be? The county's going to go Democratic, the state's going to go red.
Yeah, and the irony, of course, is the other county that falls into that is Davidson. And so Memphis and Nashville, blue dots and a red C is the way we like to say it. But that being said, the 2 largest counties of Republicans, of course, are Shelby and Davidson. There are, in order for us to win the state of Tennessee, we need all of the votes that we can get out of Shelby County, right? So there are, hundreds of thousands of Republicans down there. And so we need them to vote. But yeah, look, I mean, the Republicans, I think, are going to I know we're doing some great things on outreach, and we're picking up steam. I do think that polling has indicated that they're certainly among the African American community is President Trump received the largest percentage in 2020, and those numbers are up even greater than where they were 4 years ago. So there is some opportunity there for Republicans to gain ground. And of course, yeah, I mean, listen, we threw everything we had into the 2022 elections. Of course, those are in our gubernatorial years. In August is when all of the county offices are up, from county commission to mayor. And of course, in 2022, that was also judges and district attorneys and everything else. And I can tell you that we worked very hard for Worth and Amy and everybody along the ballot. I wanted to see success in Shelby County, and we came up a little bit short. And so we go back to the drawing board. This is about there are different people moving in now. We obviously have Ford Motor Company, and then the ancillary people that are coming in, people moving into Shelby County from fleeing Michigan or Illinois or California. There's some great opportunities for outreach. I know that I talked to Carrie the other day about the Whitehaven Club. There's a Republican club in Whitehaven. So we're venturing into areas that have been long dormant for the Republican Party. So yeah, I mean, we're there. I think fundamentally where we really get our votes is if you would sit down and logically compare where the modern Democrat Party is and what the modern Republican Party is. I really think that's what's going to sway some votes. And I hope that people will. I mean, there's going to be, you and I both know that there is going to be a massive amount of noise with this presidential election over the next 9 months, maybe the most in the history of our republic. But I do hope, and I really do believe that people are very smart, despite what people in my business always think that we'll just tell the voters this. I think voters are very smart. I think that they do sit down, they do look at issues, they look at things like pocketbook, they look at things like culture, and they are going to kind of measure up and say, well, this person seems to be saying what I believe. And I think if we do that, then we will see some tremendous gains in Shelby County in 2024.
All right. We've been talking with Tennessee Republican Party Chairman Scott Golden. I'm Bill Dries of the Daily Memphian, and this has been On the Record.